Hi everybody and welcome back to another Legends of Runeterra video. Today's going to be a little bit different of a video. We aren't going to have a gameplay attached to it. This is going to be a discussion video, and as you can probably guess from the screen I have up here, we're going to be talking about landmarks. Landmarks were introduced during the last expansion of this Call of the Mountain set, I guess is what it's called. Yeah, it's been out for, I think, 3 weeks now, and that has given us plenty of time to create decks around these cards, test them out, see how viable they are, see if they work, and yeah, and just, I guess, judge them, which we're going to do today. When Riot released them, they did have a little bit of a post about them and what they wanted from the cards. They wanted to create, I guess, different variability of gameplay. They wanted to create very interesting cards that could influence the course of the game when you put them out, and they wanted to just create a different style of play and different win conditions with them, and we, I guess, can talk about that a little bit too as we go through these and kind of their effectiveness and whether or not Riot hit with the landmarks or missed. Alright, so let's go ahead and start out by ranking these landmarks in terms of effectiveness and use, and if we see them, I guess, in meta, in ranked, in normal games even. And if I were to start at number one, actually, let's start backwards. Why don't we start backwards? The absolute worst card, which comes to nobody's surprise, is the University of Piltover, and I think that's pretty universal. I don't think there's much argument in the University of Piltover actually being a viable card, because it is not. At the round start, you discard your hand, you create 3 random cards in hand, and you grant them fleeting. So the only champion that this card really synergizes well with is Jinx, the only one, and this is very easily interrupted, because if you kill Jinx, then all of a sudden the effectiveness of this card and the actual usability of this card goes way down. She's not getting her super mega death rocket or whatever it's called each round, which is an additional 4 damage that she can do for 1 mana. Yeah, and she is pretty much the only card that works well in the deck with University of Piltover. And even at her best, is really just a mediocre deck. There are many better ways to play Jinx without including her in a University of Piltover deck. Which is kind of sad. Piltover and Zon as a region is a very, I think, confused region. The reason for that is their followers, it's like a combination of a ton of different ideas that Riot wanted to put, and it is very random. Because just even like in this most recent expansion and in Call of the Mountain in general, what we've seen is Piltover and Zon become a very RNG deck and also a Poro deck to some extent. They want to have like the Poro cannon, they've got the elusive Poros, they've got now the that new Poro, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but they're like turning it into a Poro deck, which is interesting. But then on top of that, they've got all these different followers and things that they want to include with their champions, right, to make those viable, but it just doesn't really work all that well together. And I think the reason why they're doing this is because they have designated Piltover and Zon as the lab region, which is, I guess, good for people who like labs, but bad for people who like playing normal gameplay, right, and like ranked in normal games. Yeah, they just want to have kind of this fun random factor that they can include into labs and just create different gameplay experiences for everybody, but the region as itself is kind of lackluster in regular gameplay. They've had strong champions in the past like Ezreal and Heimerdinger, but both of those were nerfed out of really playability. Heimerdinger has come back a little bit, but we don't really see much of Ezreal anymore at all. But yeah, so there was potential for their champions and for, I think, their followers as well, but at the moment there's just kind of like this weird cacophony and combination of units and followers and champions that just doesn't synergize well together, and they are focusing more on labs with this region, which is, in my opinion, sad. Alright, so that's enough with the University of Piltover. They definitely need to make some changes if they want it to fit into normal gameplay, but I don't think they're going to do that because, as I said, they want this to be a lab card. Alright, going up, I think in the second to last place we actually have a tie, and I'll explain this in a second after I take a drink of water after my University of Piltover rant. So the tie goes to the Vaults of Helia and Nox Crya Arena, and a lot of you might be mad at me putting this second to last, but there's a reason why I think these cards are second to last, and the main reason I will get into is their mana cost. They are both 5 mana cards, and the way they synergize well, I think, in decks is with champions that cost the same amount as them. So, for example, with Nox Crya Arena, it's very advantageous to have something like a Garen in your deck, right? It works really, like, it seems like it would work really well with Garen. At the round end, your strongest ally and your weakest enemy strike each other, help level up Garen. He's got regeneration, so he's not getting hurt at all. Yeah, but you can't get Garen out on turn 5 because you're playing the Nox Crya Arena, or you're playing Garen on turn 5, and then you have to play the Nox Crya Arena on turn 6, so the curve is pretty bad. Same thing with the Vaults of Helia. A Vaults of Helia champion, I think that would work really well. It would be a Swain, but Swain is coming down on turn 5. Swain into, I don't know, a turn 6, or a 6-cost unit into Rekindler, into the Leviathan. Seems like it would be a really strong play path there. But the Vaults of Helia is coming down on turn 5, the same round as Swain is. And the problem with this as well is you're sacrificing a lot of tempo. To play this card down. And depending on your hand state and your board state, this could completely cost you the game. Yeah, if you don't have enough units to block on turn 6, potentially, if you're going against an aggressive deck, you have 3 Vaults of Helia in your hand, because that's basically what your deck is built around, is Vaults of Helia. You've got 3 cards, or 3 Vaults of Helia in your hand, no way to put down a blocker for this sort of aggro deck, or even a mid-range deck, and you just lose the game because of loss of tempo. And then on top of that, with Vaults of Helia and Nox Crya Arena, you're damaging your units, potentially, right? And the enemy has some interactability because they know what's going to happen at the round end or round start, depending on which one you have, and so they can target a unit with spells or kill them, or and just completely ruin your game plan, ruin your ramp and with Vaults of Helia, or ruin your chances of killing the weakest enemy. They can, there's just a lot of ways that they can interact and screw up what you're trying to do, and it's pretty easy to actually play around it because you know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. I think these 2 cards need a buff. I would like to see them come down at 4 mana. We don't really see a lot of them. We see them in very niche decks. Nox Crya Arena we see with Ashe, and that is pretty much the most efficient deck that we have seen this in. Again, you're still sacrificing quite a bit of tempo with it, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get actual value out of it. They're both fun cards to build around. I've built plenty of decks around both of these, but in terms of viability, there are other cards from Noxus and from Shadow Isles, I think, that do their job better and also are not random, and you don't sacrifice it. They're very polarizing. You could win or lose with them. I think by including different cards other than these landmarks in the deck, you're making your deck a little bit more competitive, or not competitive, but yeah, just being able to win the game. I think these lower the win rate overall. That's my personal opinion. So they're coming in second to last. All right. Let's see. Right in the middle, I'm going to put the Howling Abyss. And the reason why the Howling Abyss is coming in, I guess, in third place is because, a lot of people would put this below probably Vaults of Helia and Nox Crya Arena. The reason why Howling Abyss, I think, works okay is because it works very well in a particular deck type. There's not a lot of variability around how you can play this game in terms of effectiveness, except in a mana ramp deck. You can get this card out potentially on turn 5 as well, but you can include this in a deck that has a lot of healing and a lot of regeneration units so that you can block. It's got a lot of damaging spells as well in Avalanche and in Icequake. There's just ways to protect yourself with mana ramp decks that other decks don't have access to. And then on turn 5, this card is a value powerhouse. Again, you're sacrificing quite a bit of tempo playing this card. And then in some cases as well, you don't mana ramp and you actually have to wait till turn 7. So that's also a thing as well. but it just generates a lot more. It's random in the way that it generates its units, but it's not random in when you can play it in this mana ramp deck, if that makes sense. It's pretty consistent in when you can get it out and how it plays, which is I think really good and works in its favor. And then most 2 costs or level 2 champions are pretty strong as well. So you're not usually going to flop on the champions that you're generating. You're going to be generating a champion and you're still going to be drawing out of your card pool as well, which is great. So it doesn't limit you to what cards you can play, which is also good. Yeah, and then in general, you can sacrifice this tempo that you have playing the Howling Abyss for, 7 mana or however much it costs by having healing in the deck like Catalyst of Aeons and potentially even like a Tavern Keeper. So this card's coming in at 3. I've seen it in ranked more often than Vaults of Helia and Noxcry Arena. I've seen it used more effectively in those in ranked and in normals than I have the other 2, so that's why it's coming in 3rd place. All right, 2nd place here, we are going with the Slaughterdoc. Slaughterdocs, I was sort of skeptical at first. I was very skeptical about the viability of the Slaughterdocs. I thought it sacrificed too much tempo with only tossing 1 card, but I was completely wrong about that. It's a very efficient card. You toss each round. It's coming out on turn 3. It helps them get to deep very fast. And then on top of that, it's generating value after you go deep into a potentially very strong card. You have a 50% chance of drawing a pretty strong card or turning this into a strong card. Yeah, it's a power engine. It creates more variability for deep and toss decks, which has been a problem for me with those decks in the past, that there's very linear. There's not a lot of ways to build around it. The Slaughterdocs offers a new way to play that and also generates value. I pretty much see it in... I'm pretty sure it's auto-included in every deep deck at this point, because it is very effective at what it does. And yeah, just an overall solid card. Nothing really bad to say about it, and generates value. And even after you go deep, you can play this card. You still toss a card, but you'll also turn it into a sea monster at the end of the round, or at the round start, whatever. So I mean, at no point in the game is this card dead or useless, right? The other cards are, though. These other landmarks that I've already talked about are very dead and useless in your hand once you have one of them on the board, but the Slaughterdocs is not. So that just raises its overall effectiveness. And then coming out on turn 3 as well is generating more value than these other cards are earlier in the game. Also very important. All right, and then on to first place here. We've got Starspring. I think that comes as no surprise to anybody. Starspring just it's just a really good card. It works well in a bunch of different decks. It offers a secondary win condition right off the bat. Once you heal 22 plus damage from your allies, you win the game. This landmark can fit in mini decks and Freljord. It can fit in Bilgewater. It can fit in Targon. Healing your cards is just universally good. A good thing to heal your units, right? Unless you are trying to kill them in Shadow Isles or something. But overall, healing can fit in a variety of decks. You can build around this card in a variety of ways, from regeneration, troll regeneration, to Ember Maiden, to Soraka heal, to Bilgewater, self-damage, and it's coming out on turn 2. You get value out of this starting on turn 2, which is something that it offers that none of these other cards do. Just an overall solid card. I really don't have much bad to say about the Starspring, other than it might be a little bit too overpowered, just compared to these other landmarks. It almost makes them look silly. Yeah. I don't think it's overpowered as a card necessarily, but compared to these others, it is a lot better. Just night and day better. Slaughterdocs is the only one that's even close to being as good as Starspring, but Slaughterdocs cannot be combined in a deck that's outside of Deep, and Starspring can be included in a deck that's outside of Self-Heal. So there's our list. We got Starspring, Slaughterdocs, Howling Abyss, Vaults of Helia, Noxcry Arena, and University of Piltover. Overall, I would say that landmarks are probably underwhelming. They don't fit a lot into viable decks. I would like to see them buff those probably bottom 3 decks to make them a little bit more viable, a little bit easier to play. That's my opinion. Yeah, so that's about it. We're going to end up here. If you want to comment, say how you would change these landmarks to make them a little bit better. If you like the landmarks as they are, you can comment about that as well. But yeah, do you think that Riot hit or missed the mark with the landmarks and what they're trying to do with the game? Go ahead and leave that comment as well. If you enjoy this type of video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks.